not good. That's not good at all. Welcome to Radical Underdogs. It is time to put this car back together. The head has returned from Mike Comber Racing. Thank you very much to Mike. And I've already started doing the bodywork stuff as well. I'm not quite sure which order I'm going to publish this video in. But let's get on with putting this engine back together. If you remember, there was a broken stud here, and at Mike's place we had to weld a nut to the old stud, which I think was over tightened, and get that out. Now the threads are, I think it might have been cross threaded as well. So I'm just trying to repair the threads with a tap, just lightly running it through and hopefully being able to get a new stud in there. And it's Future Wheel doing the commentary here. We're putting the intake back on the head before it goes in, just because it's got some really nasty bolts. Well, nasty in the sense that they're difficult to access. So it's much easier to do it whilst it's out of the car. So I'm doing all, but it does make it a lot heavier. So there are swings and roundabouts with this, but I decided to go with the route with putting the intake back on the head as it was out of the car. That's how it came off, and torquing it all up nicely. And you can see I've fitted the nice disconnects there for the fuel lines. They look really good. Giving the head another clean just to make sure everything is clean, flat and free of any imperfections. Does look good. Thanks to Mike again for the work he did on that. The head does look good, and I'm just having a look at the manual and making sure I'm doing everything right. It is the first time I've done a lot of this stuff, so taking quite a lot of time over it just to make sure everything is done properly. Anyway, back to pass wheel. We are ready. The top dead center. You can see the, yeah. E and I. Got the locked. Need to put the gasket on. Okay. It doesn't say this way up or anything, does it? No. It seems you know what you're doing. That looks like it matches everything up. Which was, I've forgotten which way around it was now. I assume you can put it on afterwards because it comes with the water pump and you don't normally take the head off with the water pump, so I'm going to leave that for the time being. Yeah, thank you for recommending that, but So if I recall right, this is very heavy. And now I have to place it in a way which is very precise. Oh dear, I don't want to do this. Alright, okay. I should have really maybe done this afterward. I don't know. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Right, okay. We're in here. Okay. I don't want to just slam it down, do I? Having a second person would be really useful right now. Gently, gently, gently. Okay. Yes. Felt like it located on the dowels. Okay. Are we in? Are we in? Okay. Oh man. Two people 2 people will be much more helpful. Just put new bolts in there gently to start with, and then we'll do the torque sequencing. Amazing. Okay, I have very slowly, because it's the first time I've done this, put this back together. I've timed it, I've turned the engine over several times, I've checked all the torques of everything. So I've got the intake on and I've got the head on, head bolts are all torqued down, and the timing belt is on. I've turned the engine over a little bit, and I've got to use my tool, so that does work. It just requires the engine to be turned over a little bit. So I'm now going to torque up this bolt, which is to a massive 160 Newton meters, and I'm going to use Loctite 243 because I don't have any 242. But apparently I've looked it up online, and 243 is more or less a replacement for 242, according to Loctite. That's good enough for me, so I am going to do that now. And to hold the camshaft in place whilst I was doing all this, I used that 3D printed tool there, you can see, which actually works out really well. That was a really useful tool, and it's one of the really good uses of the 3D printer actually. Trying to measure it with the set square and pushing it down and measuring it with, I never really managed it with the ruler, to be honest, but you know, it's worth giving it. I don't know, it's difficult to know whether it's too tight or too loose. If anything, it's too tight. I don't know. It probably is to spec, to be honest. I'm probably overthinking it. But I was almost overthinking everything with this because it is the first time I've done a lot of this stuff. Going on to putting everything back together again now. So once all the timing's been set, I was going to put all the auxiliary belt back on and make sure all the timing belt covers, etc. are back on. Just make sure that stuff doesn't get into it. I guess you could leave them off because this is a race car. It doesn't really go on the road, and so it doesn't do that many miles. You could leave timing covers off to save a bit of weight, but I think just the risk of something getting in there is a bit too high. I had a chat with a few of the other people, and certainly that seems to be the consensus. Some people leave it open, save a bit of weight. I don't know. It just seems like not very much weight for not a huge amount of gain anyway. So anyway, back to pass wheel. Okay, I've got the multi-layer gasket on, flat side towards the engine with the tab at the front, the spot welded tab. That's what it says in the forums and supposedly the factory manual. This though is a huge pain. Well, it's kind of lining up, but it's not really going on. I don't know whether it needs a little bit of persuade. I don't want to damage the threads. So it's all lined up. There's nothing preventing it just going on, but apparently there is. Nope, just bounces off. Oh, hello. There you go. This needed to be lined up. Cool. That's done. Nice. Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened to get that exhaust on. It just seemed to just not fit, and then put it on and it did fit. And then I just used the nuts to screw it down and it kind of worked. Bit of a weird thing. Also, it's got that multi-layer gasket on, so thank you to whoever pointed out in the first video. That was helpful to know that that is how it's supposed to be. Anyway, back to pass wheel once again. Okay, silicone sealant just needs to be in a little bit of this cam cover, not all of it. This is not great siliconing. Hopefully it'll do the job. And at the back. Come on. Don't do this to me. Literally just test fitted it just now, so that I wouldn't have to go through this. There you go. squish. Make sure I put the ones with the seal holes next to each other. So, these titanium bolts. It feels like we're on the home stretch now. It was a bit of a pain in the arse getting that valve cover on. That was because I think one of the mounting points was bent. Now I did put silicone sealant as it was in the manual, and people afterwards told me that don't bother with it and it'll be okay. However, my last valve cover was leaking a bit, and there was oil sort of spreading around as after races and stuff like that. So I did feel like the silicone, it does say you should do it in the manual. But then, of course, people then said to me, "Oh, you should probably be tightening up your head bolts after a few heat cycles and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't say that in the book." And so I've now siliconed on the valve cover. I guess you could take it off and scrape all the silicone off and reapply it and all of that sort of stuff. I'd rather not do that, to be honest. So if you do have views, certainly some people say absolutely you must tighten up head bolts. Other people say it doesn't really matter, but I'd quite like to know what people think, really, whether or not I really need to after a few heat cycles. I suppose it's not a huge amount of work to whip the valve cover off, but I don't really want to be cleaning up all that silicone again, to be honest. Anyway, we're getting the spark plugs in, getting the spark plug wires in. We're getting very, very close now to firing this thing up. I'm torquing everything down using my torque wrench. I do need to go to get these torque wrenches calibrated, actually. I haven't ever done it, and I know there are services out there that do it. It's probably something I should do, especially if you're working on an engine where torques do matter. I think elsewhere, especially on the Mazda manuals, they kind of specify a range of torque. So if you kind of go in the middle when your torque wrench is more or less there, I feel like that's okay. But for the engine stuff, I think the torque that actually matter a bit more. So I might try and get some of these torque wrenches calibrated. I don't know if anyone has ever tried to do that in the past. It'd be quite useful to hear what people think about that. Oh, what's going on here is I'm fitting the radiator back on. It was damaged in that accident in Silverstone last year, which means it doesn't really line up with the mounting points very easily. So I was wrestling with it to put it back in the car. Another thing we had to wrestle with was put the anti-roll bar back on as well, because I did take it off, or at least I took the mounts in the middle of the car off so I could swing it out of the way. Bit of a pain in the ass to put it back on again, actually. Anyway, back to pass wheel. Okay, it is the end of the day. I haven't been able to fill it up with coolant yet, so I'm just gonna see if it fires up. Just because my back is hurting and I don't really want to push it, but I really want to see whether it fires up or not. It has been primed with. It's been primed with fuel. Let's just see if it starts. Come on. Oh, that's not good. And where the fuel pump goes. Okay, so something's not connected. Okay, so there was no crank last time. I just pushed a few electrical connectors. One of them clicked. So I'm hoping that will energise the starter, because that was what was not working last time. That's not good. That's not good at all. Have I f***ed it? Oh no. Okay, the battery maintainer had fallen off, so I'm just hoping maybe that it's just low battery and it's cold. First start. I'm going to charge the battery, see if it starts. Okay. Battery is actually charged, so I'm just going to try it one more time. Yes, 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 come on! Nice. Right, I can fill up with coolant now. Oh my gosh, that was a pain. Why did it not fire? Why did it not fire before? well, at least it fired. At the time, it definitely felt like that engine was dead. I'd messed something up and there'd been piston to valve contact or something like that. But it turned out it did fire up okay, and the next day it did warm up with the coolant in it as well. So I was able to set the timing. I've got my own timing light, so I was able to set it more or less to about 13 degrees. And I'm going to obviously change that when it gets to the dyno, but I think at least to start with, that's probably a good place to start it. Able to set the idle as well, so that went down a bit because it's idling a bit high. But yeah, I was really upset about it not starting for the first time. I don't know what had happened. I do just hope it was cold, and I just haven't really been able to diagnose it any further than that. Changing all the fluids as well, you can see oil and coolant. Coolant, because of course a lot of the head gasket material, when I was scraping it off before, fell into the coolant jackets. I did try and get most of it out when the water pump was off, but inevitably there's always going to be a bit in there, so it's worth changing all the fluids again afterwards, and again with the oil as well. Just didn't want to be having any gasket material that might find its way into a difficult place in an oil channel somewhere. Better safe than sorry. It needed an oil change anyway. I do change the oil around every 500 miles on the race car. It does get an absolute beating, of course. It's running at almost top revs the entire time. So looking after the engine with regular oil changes is sort of no-brainer, really. So changing the oil, changing the filter as well, because just in case that filter got clogged up again with that gasket material. I don't know how paranoid I have to be with it, to be honest. But might as well, since the car's here, since it's on the ramps already, means that I can quite easily just change the water and the coolant, which is kind of handy. I'm doing this in the middle of a cold snap as well, which is not the best time to be working on a car with both doors open in your garage, late into the evening on a winter's night. But with the racing season basically from March to September, October, it's really the only time you get to take the car off the road for a bit and do all this stuff. But anyway, back to Pass Will. An awful lot of work to put this back together. I'll be quicker next time, I promise. A lot of this stuff was doing it for the first time on this car, actually. I am going to compression test this car next, just to make sure it has actually improved things. And then we're going to get it on the dyno. Let's see how much power this thing makes. But that's all for a future video. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you again in the next one.